Everybody, how's it going today? Happy Wednesday to you. Welcome to Lombardi Time Brews Live, where I'm your host, John Delray. Just decided to hop on for a little bit today and chat anything Packers. Of course, the Combine kicking off this week. Then we've also got some financial news, as well as the NFLPA dropped on us this morning their player grades for each individual franchise, and the Packers did pretty well there. So we're going to go over a number of those subcategories as well. Talk about kind of maybe what that means for the Packers, or what certain individuals in the organization can perhaps improve upon. And so I see Janelle is here. Hello, Janelle. I'm going to cover the union stuff first, or actually second. Let's go first with news about Preston Smith. If you had any questions about whether Preston Smith is going to be retained next year or not, those can now go by the wayside, as he agreed today to what is basically just a pay cut. Yes, Preston Smith agreeing to a reduction in his base salary of $2.4 million, taking his number down to about $10 million for the season, gives the Packers $2.4 in additional space. As basically a thank you for doing that, the Packers then gave him $4 million in incentives, but from what I've read, it's still kind of shaky yet. This is very new news, but from what I've read, it's believed that these are probably unlikely to be earned incentives, and that then does not count on the cap right away. So Preston Smith reducing his cap number for the year, ultimately taking a pay cut for the Green Bay Packers. And that kind of transitions to the next topic I was going to talk about, which is the NFLPA grades. Got dropped on us this morning and amongst all of the Combine news, and the Green Bay Packers actually did really well. You can see all of their subgrades here, but just know that they finished third in the NFL behind the Dolphins and the Vikings. There's a listing of all the different categories and where they finish league-wide, and somehow that gets them to finish third. If you dive into the full literature about this, like certain things are weighted more than others, and that's how the Packers get up to third. But there's a few categories that I did want to talk about specifics with that the NFLPA gave us. One would be ownership. You know, a lot of us, and well, in this context, really Mark Murphy, but he was granted an A, 6th overall in the NFL. And what weighed most heavily into that grade is the fact that a lot of players believe that Mark Murphy was willing to reinvest in the team. Perhaps the Packers have an easier time doing that. It's not Murphy's personal money, but nonetheless, still an A there. And then the locker room, one area that could use a little bit of improvement per the players, getting a B- this year, 16th in the NFL, dead middle. And really, they felt as though the locker room is big enough, feel as though it serves the needs, but it could just use some updating, which, yeah, fair enough. Steve, hello, Steve. Hey, John, I can take a pay cut as well to help the team. Hey, you are a team player, my friend. That's all that means. Now, one thing that I definitely wanted to highlight was the strength coaches, because the strength coaches got themselves an A-, good for 8th in the NFL. Keep in mind this A-, 8th in the NFL. That's the grade that the players gave Chris Gizzy, who is fired. So just something to keep in mind, kind of a retroactive grade here. But some very nice grading for him as he now looks to go elsewhere. Now, another very notable one, Matt LaFleur, B+, 21st in the NFL. And this is perhaps a little bit lower than a lot of people expected it, given the team's success this year. And I think the two bullets here really do a good job of showing why. 92% of the players felt that Matt LaFleur is efficient with their time. Good for 15th in the NFL, basically middle. But then the players feel that Matt LaFleur is moderately listening to the locker room, 26th overall. And there's a world of context with this that we just don't know, right? For instance, when were the surveys taken? Because if the surveys were taken following the Tampa game or the Carolina game, and we had all of this dissension, let's say, with Devondre Campbell and Jair, then he's not going to grade well. Was it taken after the playoffs are concluded? Like, these are things that we just don't have the full allotment of details to, at least that I didn't see. But nonetheless, in the survey, this is where Matt LaFleur falls, and he may have some work to do in this department. In terms of the training staff, here they gotta be. This would be oftentimes the guys that handle individual injuries. The Packers always rank pretty favorably here. Again, perfectly middle of the road. And then this is the one that's making a lot of headlines because they were finished with a B plus last year in this category, down to a C plus this year. Still good for 10th in the NFL. Still, if you go out and read a lot of the F minuses, because that's a thing in these grades, a whole bunch of teams got F minuses in the treatment of families. Packers certainly aren't there. That's C plus, good for 10th in the NFL. Basically, the bullet points explain they've got a family room, but the Packers are one of just a few teams left in the NFL that don't provide game day daycare for kids of the players. And they really want that to occur. I believe I saw somewhere that there's like 7 teams that aren't doing that daycare. Packers, of course, being one. I would not be shocked at all, given the fact that it hurt the grading, that we may be looking at some daycare expansion in Lambeau Field next year. So there you have it. The Green Bay Packers ultimately finishing 3rd in the NFL for these NFLPA grades. And really, like, so much of this doesn't matter, but really, why does it matter? Because if you think the players don't pay attention, they absolutely do. Free agents considering things, draft prospects, right? They're looking at this. Agents are absolutely looking at this. That's why it's important. And the Packers finishing as well as they did, it is important. It also does show that there may be some things to improve on there as well. Hey, Peter, bonjour to you, Peter. The Packers also got an A+ for the fan base thanks to freaking fracking Tom Grossi. Yeah. Fan of the year is worth extra credit, right? Like it's gotta be. If not, what are we really doing here? So, all right, let me know if you got any questions out there, but I did just want to hop on today, ultimately just to touch base, talk about Preston Smith, talk about the report cards, but then also Combine is kicking off. Make sure you check out Combine scores over the next stretch of time. And then, like I said, in the message that I put out in the community post earlier, I've got some time that I'm going to be away coming up. And I'm going to try at least, because I may very well be gone over the free agency, like beginning period, which is March 14th. I may, if I can do it, pop off like a one-off video, a free agent primer, if you will. We'll see if that can come into fruition, or if not, we'll see how it's going. But that's the game plan moving forward. And then it's going to be a couple weeks that I'm out. So a few things that I did want to talk about in terms of free agency for the Packers relating to Brian Gutekunst's press conference yesterday. I didn't have an opportunity to give thoughts on this yet, so I thought now would be a good time. One, David Bakhtiari. David Bakhtiari and his whole situation, I've made it known that I would not mind him coming back on a pay cut. That's a very important part of the sentence there. Brian Gutekunst basically said yesterday in his press conference that the decision hasn't been made about Bakhtiari yet because it doesn't have to be made about Bakhtiari yet, that will be made by the new league year. What I did find incredibly interesting is in the past, historically, when Brian has acknowledged, like, we're talking to his agents about a potential pay cut or restructuring, whatever, he generally mentions that. Think back a few years ago with Zadarius Smith, when there were lots of cut rumors about Smith, and there was supposedly an option on the table from Gutekunst to Smith to take a pay cut. And Gut said at the Combine something along the lines of, well, he's got to decide. Like, we've talked to him, he's got to decide. Then also even Devondre Campbell. This, in my mind, was another newsworthy bit from Gutekunst when he was acknowledging that he says he really wants to have Devondre Campbell back next year, which was a little bit of a surprise. And he said that they need to take a look at that contract. When it came to David Bakhtiari, none of that. Like, none of that. We've talked to them. None of that. He's got to decide. So we'll see which way it goes. One last really bit of noteworthy mention from that press conference. Gutekunst talked about how they'd like to get back into drafting quarterbacks again. Keep in mind, years ago under Ron Wolf, it was commonplace for the Packers to draft basically a quarterback a year. And then they turned Mark Brunell into future capital. They turned Aaron Brooks into future capital. Like, the Packers were this quarterback factory that every couple of years would have a quarterback drafted. They'd get some league acclaim, and then they'd be able to flip them for further assets. And that's great. It's just then they stopped, specifically really over a lot of the back end of Aaron Rodgers' career. They just haven't done it as much. And frankly, the Packers getting back into that mode, especially when they've got the second most picks in the NFL this year, seems like a really good idea. And that's not necessarily going to be the end for Sean Clifford. There's no reason in the world why they can't continue carrying on with, 3 quarterbacks. So we'll just have to see how the draft shakes out. But I was very encouraged to see Brian Gutekunst acknowledge that and say that that's something that he wants to get back into. All right, so let's hit a couple of these comments. Rigby Mordecai saying, I was just going to ask, anything interesting through the grapevine from the start of the combine? Not really. Been kind of quiet thus far. And I will say, too, that it really will begin to ramp up as a lot of the guys actually get their testing in, which happens in the back half of this week. A lot of the last couple of days have been reporters and team execs just kind of flying into Indianapolis, drinking a lot, from what I've always heard, that's the main event of the combine, and networking. But then also doing interviews with the players, be it formal or informal. We won't hear anything about top 30 visits really until we get going. One player that I've mentioned before that I've seen multiple people say that they've heard, the Packers are interested in Edgerrin Cooper, the inside linebacker from Texas A&M, I should say. So that's really it. And then really just the stuff from Gutekunst yesterday. That's the big news as of right now. Peter saying everyone seems so excited for Nubin, DeJean, or Kinchins at the safety position. What about Georgia Javon Bullard as a dark horse in the next Green Bay draft? Bullard, I think, from what I recall, there is some concern. I think he might just be in that next tier, Peter. Like, certainly possible. I know some people who cover the Packers are really high on him, others not so much. And I think a lot of the not so muchness has to do, one, there are a couple of size concerns there. Of course, we won't know for sure until the combine. And then two, whether there's some tackling issues there as well, which I think people are just sick and tired of seeing in Green Bay. But sir, I would still put him in that next tier of possibilities. But as you acknowledge, I mean, DeJean, Nubin, Kinchins, they are the top of the class, unless you ask PFF, like in my last mock draft, because PFF does not seem to like Kinchins right now. But those are the top 3 by all accounts right now. Steve saying, Spencer Rattler, I hope. You've said that before, and it's possible. We'll see. I've seen some stuff that has him creeping up in the draft as of late, really kind of moving into that rounds 3-4 type range. I think that's probably a little bit early for when Green Bay may be looking for this new quarterback investment. I would think it's going to be a day 3 selection for them, but you never know. Mark, hello, Mark. Have you heard about Watson's dad saying that strength and conditioning was part of the hamstring issues? Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Like I used to follow a lot of what Watson's family was saying on Twitter a lot. And then I don't mean this to be disrespectful in any way, shape, or form, but then they just kept talking like a lot. And it began to be like, okay, I understand he's your family, but like there are some legitimate critiques here that may eventually be Christian's fault. So, I mean, like, yes, possible. When it comes to those grades, I mean, keep in mind, one, the Packers are an incredibly young team. So for a lot of the rookies, their point of reference, or even second-year guys, has been, collegiately, what was their strength coach like? Or because Gizzy's been there for quite a while, it's a lot of Packers who haven't experienced anything else. So I think the fact that you have this very high grade for Gizzy, and then you've got LaFleur ultimately deciding to go in a different direction. He's almost kind of like LaFleur overriding the team, kind of vetoing, if you will, and saying, no, like this is one spot where I know more than you guys. Even if you like him, we're moving in a different direction. Given those player results on the grades, it would be very interesting to hear players' reactions to Gizzy being fired, to Aaron Hill coming in, but I doubt we're going to get many quotes in that direction. And then also saying, yeah, Preston took a $2.4 million pay cut. Yep, open at the top of that. He is also, there added some incentives supposedly onto the contract as well, just they're not likely to be earned. And that keeps his cap number still down. But yeah, still $2.4 million pay cut for Preston Smith. And Peter saying, the more I watch Edgerrin Cooper highlights, the more I want that beast in Green Bay. I'm with you. Like, I like him a lot. My only concern, and maybe this will be alleviated if they keep Devondre Campbell around, because like as I've been talking about, 4-3 base, yeah, they're only going to roll that out like 20%-ish of plays about on league average, right? But still, you need a strong side, middle, and weak side. And Quay, in all likelihood, his play style puts him more in the middle to weak category, maybe especially weak. For that Sam spot, though, that strong side linebacker, Edgerrin Cooper, that's probably not a role for him. So if you roll with McDuffie, Cooper, and Quay, you got 3 like middle weak siders. See what I'm saying? Maybe Devondre alleviates that if they do opt to hang on to Devondre, because I do think he could play some Sam. But I mean, yeah, in terms of like, I want good players on my team, Edgerrin Cooper fits the bill. And I do think he'd be a welcome addition as an off-ball linebacker in Green Bay. I see no issue with that whatsoever, Peter. All right, looks like I caught up on everything. And to be frank, I don't mind today being a little bit shorter. So I'll hang out for one more minute, see if anybody's got any more questions before I depart. I did also want to mention the addition to free agency. It's expected of a couple of guys. One, Xavier Howard, cornerback from the Miami Dolphins. Packers are not going to go there. I would be shocked. But then one that was a little bit more intriguing, Jonnu Smith, the tight end from the Atlanta Falcons, he was let go. If the Packers pursue him, I would assume it would be under the angle of we're not retaining DeGuara. We need someone to come in to that H-back or fullback role. And that's kind of where someone like a Jonnu Smith could fit. I would not be shocked to see that be a veteran acquisition as free agency gets going, and perhaps Jonnu Smith being added into the fray. Maybe it gives them a candidate in that regard. We've got yet to see. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for checking out the Lombardi Time Brews. As I've been saying, I'm out. I'm going to be gone for a couple of weeks now still. If you follow me on Twitter, I'll still probably put some stuff out. It's going to be a few days, though, because I'm going to be totally honest here. I might not be on planet Earth for the next couple of days. But then after that, I'm going to try to pop in, get some kind of free agency primer. It will literally be if my throat will allow me to do it or not. We'll find out soon. Steve saying, I don't see anyone getting franchise tag, at least from the Packers side of things. 1,000,000% agree with you. I don't see anyone getting transition tagged. This is not the year for that. There are no free agents entering the market that the Green Bay Packers absolutely positively have to retain. So tagging is pretty much out. I think there's a lot of guys that they're comfortable with allowing to get to the market and allowing the market to dictate their value. And then if they want to come to Green Bay, by all means, come on back. So may the force be with you as well as you, Peter. Thank you so much. It is time for me to get going. So everybody out there, take care of yourselves for the next few weeks. I'll still be active on Twitter. I'll maybe do a couple posts on YouTube, but I am going to miss you guys. So going to be 2-3 weeks is the expectation as of right now. And I'll keep you posted as I always do. So thanks, everybody. I will be seeing you soon. And as always, go Pack Go.